Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, serials, debt slicers, peasants, vassals, minions, citizens of the globe. Welcome. I am a useful idiot, and I'm coming to you globally today because I'm talking about the world. And in this case, the IMF warning about a global housing bubble. And I realize this story is a couple months old, but I still wanted to cover it. It's been on my backlog. Because it's important to look at, because the real estate havoc that created the financial crash of 2008, or certainly was a pivotal part of that whole mess. We find the same circumstances setting themselves up on a global scale now, including the U.S. again. So the whole idea of the Federal Reserve and the central banks around the world, their concept, of course, was to return to normal, means to reinflate all these asset bubbles that had deflated. And for them, that was an unnatural event. And it's a natural economic event and should have been allowed to play out. But instead, we have this new normal where they reinflate these asset bubbles, and now they're reaching new heights again, and the underpinnings for infrastructure are just as rotten and deteriorated as they were before, and the attached securities market that goes with that, and all the collateralized debt obligations, and et cetera, et cetera. So we have some dark forces going on, and it's on a global scale. So this is pretty staggering, because not only do we have a lot of countries that escaped the last real estate trashing, there's a lot of countries this time that may not be so lucky. I know I did a video about Australia going through a boom-bust cycle, and there was a lot of doubters, and that was a couple of years ago. But those forces are still in play, and Australia will be facing the music, because the commodities markets of China is drying up. Iron ore prices have plummeted, and we have massive real estate inflation in Australia. So all those forces are in play there. So let's get back to the story. So the IMF basically warns of a global housing bubble. House prices will be well above historic averages, and certainly that's true, especially in relation to wages and rent. And that ratio is even more distorted now, because, of course, we have a lot more people renting, and wages have stagnated and are declining. And so, although those certainly, when you go country to country globally, those same points are not necessarily accurate for every single country. For example, wages are pretty good in Australia, but that's not necessarily going to save them. So interestingly enough, in this IMF report, they only mention specifically a few countries like Australia, Belgium, Canada, Norway, and Sweden. And so that's kind of interesting, because when you get to the extended list, it actually includes Canada, New Zealand, Norway, Belgium, Australia, Finland, the United Kingdom, France, Sweden, Spain, Ireland, the United States, Switzerland, Germany, Israel, Turkey, Brazil, and Indonesia. And as I understand it, most of the countries in Southeast Asia, including the Philippines, are also facing problems. And just doing a perusal of some of these countries to look at the kind of numbers we're talking about. And let's remember that all these numbers are the reinflation forces, central bank money going into the system in this fake recovery. And so this is the result. These numbers are very high. In Norway, prices are up 30% since 2008. In Switzerland, prices are up 20% since 2009. In Canada, prices are up 20% just since last year. In Germany, Berlin, in Berlin, rents are up 80% just in the last year. And half the people in Germany rent, which is kind of an interesting fact. In Brazil, home prices have doubled in 5 years. São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, home prices rose by 188% and just 230% as of January. going back 5 years. So this is quite a recovery in the real estate market with all this reinflation. Of course, a lot of it's driven by foreign investors. A lot of it's driven by institutional buyers. And that's one of the reasons why we have such a precarious position in the United States with all this real estate being bought up by Blackstone and groups like that as investments. And as soon as it becomes economically unviable for them, we'll find a replay of a lot of properties going back on the market. And a lot of those properties are deteriorating as we speak, but a lot of those predatory banks are moving, and hedge funds are actually moving into Europe now, and now they're investing in cheap real estate in Spain and Ireland. So this cycle will continue all around the globe, and global prices in general across the globe are up 3% just in the last year. And as I mentioned, it's all driven by foreign investors and cheap money. And the Fed, as we've just found out this week, is going to continue their policies, and we're going to see a lot more liquidity into the market in Europe as this new loan operation goes on with the central bank in the Eurozone. Something like 400 billion euros available in cheap loans to all these banks and corporations. And prices are surging in emerging markets, as I mentioned, year over year. Real estate's up 10% in the Philippines, 7% in Brazil. And the most notable case we see, of course, is this massive real estate and real estate related bubble in China. And that's going to be the premier one. So certainly with all of these global housing bubbles precariously working with each other for the time being, should any one of these failings happen, we can see those ripple effects again. And should it be China, of course, that would be the worst case scenario. Although, for the most part, we've seen that the Chinese government has been able to take obviously very unorthodox, extraordinary means, and then all of their numbers are extremely cooked, so we have no idea of knowing what the real situation is anyway. But if you look at everything on the surface, everything is in place for some sort of economic, or at least real estate collapse in China, with prices being offered at 25% discounts right now. And of course, in China, when we have these kind of economic disturbances, there's also a lot of social unrest. So anyway, just a heads up that that IMF warning is actually very warranted, and we have ridiculous global housing bubbles in countries all over the globe, in the United States as well. And as we know, all the attended apparatus, financial apparatus that goes along with that, in securities, and derivatives, etc. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.